The silence in the house was as thick as the humidity clinging to the air in this Louisiana summer. Even the cicadas seemed to have taken a break from their relentless symphony, leaving only the hum of the refrigerator and the distant rumble of a passing truck. I sat at the kitchen table staring at the half-eaten bowl of cereal in front of me, a lump forming in my throat that had nothing to do with the soggy Cheerios. 3 days. 3 days since I last spoke to my husband, Michael. 3 days since his eyes had met mine without a flicker of anger, or the flicker of a forced smile that felt more like a mockery of our past. It started with a simple disagreement, a misunderstanding, really. I had called him at work, a habit I knew he detested, but he was late and I needed his help with the plumber. He was curt, his tone clipped, and I, ever sensitive to his moods, took it personally. We argued, our voices rising in the suffocating heat of the phone line. Then, silence. A silence that stretched into the night, and the next day, and the next. The house, normally buzzing with Michael's energy, felt eerily quiet. His morning routine, the clanging of pots and pans, the rhythmic thump of his running shoes, the smell of coffee wafting through the air, was absent. I could hear the echoes of his footsteps in the empty hallways, the rustle of his clothes in the closet, the phantom scent of his cologne lingering on the pillow. It was a strange kind of grieving, this slow, suffocating silence. It felt like a loss, a stripping away of everything familiar, leaving me exposed and vulnerable. I longed for his voice, his laughter, the warmth of his presence. Even his anger, I thought, would be preferable to this heavy, suffocating silence. I tried to reach him, of course. Text messages went unanswered. Phone calls went straight to voicemail. Even the kids, usually his Achilles heel, couldn't penetrate his wall of silence. He was a ghost, a distant phantom, leaving me alone in the wreckage of our once vibrant life. It wasn't a sudden blow, this silence, this distance. It had been creeping in for months like a slow, insidious poison. We had both been too busy, too preoccupied with our own lives, our own ambitions. We had forgotten how to talk, how to listen. Our separate worlds had become so vast, so different, that the space between us had grown into an unbridgeable chasm. He was a lawyer, a shark in the world of corporate litigation. He was fierce, driven, a man who lived for the next win, the next deal. I was a school teacher, a nurturer, a woman who found solace in the quiet rhythm of children's laughter. We were two halves of a whole, but the whole had grown fractured, each piece pulling away from the other. The years, the pressure of mortgages and college funds and the ever-increasing demands of our careers had taken their toll. We had stopped holding hands, stopped gazing deeply into each other's eyes. We had become roommates, colleagues, strangers sharing a roof and a life, but with little connection. My heart ached for him, for the man I had loved with every fibre of my being. He was still there, I knew, hidden behind the anger, the hurt, the frustration. He was still there, somewhere deep down, the man who had once promised me forever. Days turned into a week. I couldn't bear the silence anymore. I packed a suitcase, grabbed the car keys, and drove to his office. The receptionist, a young woman with a bright smile and eyes that held a flicker of pity, told me he was in a meeting. I waited in the sterile lobby, my mind a whirlwind of emotions. He emerged from his office, his face taut, his eyes weary. He looked at me, his expression unreadable, and, for a moment, I thought I saw a flicker of something like recognition. "I need to talk to you, Michael," I said, my voice trembling. He sighed, a long, weary sigh that seemed to carry the weight of the world. "There's nothing to say, Sarah." "There's always something to say," I retorted, my voice rising. "We can't just shut each other out. We can't just let this silence kill us." He stared at me, his gaze holding a strange mix of anger and something that felt like regret. Then he turned and walked back into his office, leaving me standing there, alone, in the suffocating silence of his world. I knew then that this was not just about a fight, a misunderstanding. It was about something deeper, something more profound. It was about two people, once so deeply in love, now struggling to find their way back to each other. I left the office, the silence echoing in my ears, the future uncertain. I knew, however, that this silence, this distance couldn't stand. I had to fight for him, for us. This wasn't the end, I knew, but a beginning. A chance to rebuild, to rekindle the flame of what we once had. It wouldn't be easy, but I was determined to find my way back to the man I loved, to the man I knew was still there, waiting for me, hidden behind the silence, behind the hurt.